Inside of these two boxes are two of the best coolers that you can get for your CPU. So once you have your CPU in place, the next thing that you really need to pin down is which style of cooler are you going to use. That means looking at both your case, your motherboard, the spacing, and the thermals that are going to be used in your system. In this video, I'm going to cover all of the details that you need in order to know how to cool that new CPU that you have mounted in your motherboard. This is the Project 7 series where I go into long-form detailed review of how to build your own gaming system in 2021. If you like gaming performance content like this, consider clicking that like button, maybe even subscribing.
So let's talk about the overall considerations that you are going to have when it comes to selecting a CPU cooler. Now, there are two trends that have been pretty much dominant for the last 5 years or so. On the right, you see what is called a tower cooler. That is because it sits very far away from the actual CPU. It towers over the entire case, and it allows the air to move in a proper direction through the front fan that you see right there, through the middle fan, potentially a third fan in the back, towards the back of the case. This is the natural airflow pattern for most cases, and this cooler takes advantage of that. The one on the left is a water cooler. This is an all-in-one cooler. It is designed to be easy to mount, easy to use, simply has a device that connects down on the CPU itself, and then a radiator fan combination that you mount elsewhere. The first consideration that you have to take in here is space. Can you fit these inside of your case? There are different size radiators, there are different size towers. You need to make sure that if you get a smaller case than a mid-sized tower, like the one I'm recommending for Project 7, the Fantex P500A, if you have a smaller case, you could run into a situation where the tower doesn't properly fit, or you might have to sacrifice some radiator space in order to get it to fit in the case. So the amount of space that you have to work with is certainly a key consideration. Price is another. I've not really been able to find too many coolers that I could recommend in the sub $80 category. Now, if you recall, CPU and CPU overclocking is not necessarily a high priority for gaming, but we do want to at least get the maximum performance that we can get out of the CPU in its natural state. $80 to $110 is roughly the price range that I'm going to be recommending. The last item that you need to know is the target temperature of your CPU. Now, every CPU that is on the market today, especially those that are in the higher end enthusiast class, gaming class grades, they're going to target between 70 to 90 degrees Celsius for their boosting range. Once a CPU reaches about 70°C, its boost is going to slowly drop off. It's not going to boost as high after that point. So keeping a CPU below 70 is your ultimate goal. But in order to do that, most of the time you have to go with complex custom water cooling and some other things. And for gaming purposes, it's not worth it. So now let's dive into the two categories. There's a debate between air-cooled and liquid-cooled. Steve from Gamers Nexus, of course, has done videos on this as well. I can't disagree with his conclusion. Air will not be able to beat a good liquid cooler. If you have a good liquid cooler and a good air cooler, liquid will win. It will give you several degrees Celsius, lower temperature, and potentially better boost overall. Air, though, can have certain aesthetic benefits. It can have certain noise benefits. It can have a lot of case management kind of benefits, or a lot of these coolers can look really cool in the proper build versus having the loose tubing around that an AIO comes with. That is for you to decide. But if you are looking at an air cooler, here is what you need to know. Tower design dominates. Don't even consider the radial, the actual designs, the other designs that are out there. This is a proven technique. It works extremely well, and some of the best coolers that are out there for air all are going to use the same design. So just focus here on this particular one until a radical new design comes out that can replace this one. You're going to note the number of heat pipes. Now, a heat pipe is there to remove the heat from the CPU itself and bring it into the fin radiator mechanism that you see here. Those heat pipes are very important, making sure that you have good quality and a good quantity of them so that the heat is able to effectively move from the CPU itself to the radiator fins, and that allows the air to actually do its job. The number of heat pipes is critical in making sure that that happens. You want somewhere between 6 and 8, and you want them to be a good size, several millimeters thick, in order to get the proper amount of thermal transfer from your CPU to the radiator. You absolutely need 2 fans. I have seen tower designs that are only using 1 in the middle. That is not effective. In fact, the funny thing about this is in the 6th grade, I did a science experiment on this exact topic. Now, I used a wind tunnel in that case, but I showed that multiple fans stacked together actually moved a greater volume of air over having faster fans, having fans with more fins, and having larger fans. Multiple fans move air significantly better. You want at least 2, and a lot of these tower coolers give you the option for 3 fans, which can then be coupled with an exhaust-facing fan, gives you 4 fans moving air through this cooling solution. Lastly, you do want PWM controls. This gives you the ability to adjust how fast the fan itself will spin, and by doing that, you are able to dial in the exact amount of air that needs to move through your solution to give you the best performance. All right, let's move over to water cooled. Now for water cooling, you want between a 240 and a 480 millimeter radiator. That gives you at least 4 different options of radiator size. If you're really trying to get the algorithm that supports Intel and AMD processors working really well, 240 is where you're going to start. I would like you to go into the 280 range though, because that's a little bit more surface area. Those are a little bit more pricey, but you're going to get a little bit better performance overall. I would recommend looking at the 280 or the 360 when it comes to radiator. VRM cooling becomes an issue with liquid cooling. Because there's not air moving around the CPU itself, the VRMs have a tendency to run slightly hotter. Now, Arctic here has come up with a VRM cooling solution. If you don't have something already, both your VRMs and your RAM are going to get slightly hotter. So you want to make sure that you have good air moving throughout your case in order to counteract that. Again, PWM control that allows you to control the speed of the fans. That's also really important here for a water-cooled system as well. The fans are what are doing the work. They're the ones that are actually moving air through the fins, both from a tower standpoint and a radiator water-cooled standpoint. It is that movement of air through those fins that actually does the work. Have to make sure that it fits your case. If you enjoy gaming performance content, consider clicking that like button, maybe even subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, please visit patreon.com/TheGrayingTech to learn how you can help me pay it forward. All right, so here are the recommendations, the ones that I would want you to consider. Price consciousness, Dark Rock Pro 4 I have found to be a great cooler. I would recommend go ahead and putting on the 2nd and 3rd fan. Those are technically optional, but I wouldn't treat them as such. I would put those in place, and then you're going to have a air cooler that is able to rival a lot of the liquid coolers that are out there. Noctua makes arguably the best tower design that is out there, but you are certainly going to pay a price for that. Comes with 2 140 millimeter fans. You can go ahead and consider adding in the 3rd here as well. That will help move additional air, but Noctua makes an awesome fan, and it comes in black now, and you can change the colors on the surface of the tower itself to give you a little bit better aesthetic appeal. Lastly, the Arctic Freeze 2 absolutely is the reigning champion when it comes to the current AIOs that are out there. Highly recommend that radiator, so much so that is exactly what we're putting into Project 7. Ultimately, I land on the Arctic Liquid Freeze if you can fit it into your case. That is going to give you a lot of trouble-free performance and a little bit of future-proofing. Now it is time to do what could be a more difficult portion of your build, which is actually install the cooler of choice.